I, in addition, wanted to share some thoughts from the family and myself. First of all, my mother, my sister, I, the grandkids, all thank you guys for being out. 2 o'clock on a Tuesday is not an easy thing for everybody, and threat of rain and whatnot, so we really appreciate the effort. And know there's many other people that wish they could be here, and the service will be recorded for those that would like to see it. But we just really appreciate the outpouring that we've received. It means a lot, and I just makes my heart full. I mean, some of the faces I see out there, and some of the good friends and family, and we feel your thoughts and prayers. I thought I'd try to do something a little different at first. This is a celebration, and we're going to have a little fun with this. I'm going to ask a series of 6 questions, and if any of these questions, as I ask them, pertain to you, I would like you to either stand up, or there's some of you that are going to stand up possibly all 6 times, and that may be a lot on some of you, so if you're more comfortable raising your hand at each question, I would like to do that. I think it would create a nice visual. So I'll ask the question, stand or raise your hand, and then I'll call you to sit down, and I'll ask this next question. So the first thing I'm curious is, if you've ever played a card game or any type of game with Dad, would you mind raising your hand or standing right now? Okay. So I'll take that in just a little bit. All right, you guys can go ahead and be seated. What about anybody that's gone on a trip, an outing, fishing with Dad? Would you please raise your hand or stand up? I'm watching for Rocky for sure. Okay. Very good. You can be seated there. The next thing, and I'm kind of looking back over here in this corner, who has worked with Dad at Yukon schools? Would you please stand up or raise your hand? That's right. Very good. All right, you can be seated. What about next, if anyone has worked with Dad on a project? Go ahead and stand up for me or raise your hand. Some of you guys are getting a workout, and I like it. Good deal. Okay, you can be seated. 2 more. Who in here has served in church with my father? Please stand up or raise your hand. Okay. I know there's several of you here. Thank you. Okay, go ahead and be seated. And the last one, who in here has prayed with my dad or has been there for prayer? As simple as being at a dinner and having Dad pray with them. Anyone here stand up or raise their hand? Very good. Well, I appreciate that very much. You can go ahead and have a seat, but I just think that's a great visual and something I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. So when I was thinking about Dad, there's a favorite quote of mine. I actually, until today, had it on my Facebook profile. And I'm not on Facebook very much, but the last couple of days I have been. And as I was preparing for what I was going to say and talk about Dad, I ended up having to change it because for quite a while I had on there a quote that I had said was from St. Francis of Assisi, that said, preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words. Well, as I was researching this, to my dismay, it doesn't appear he ever actually said that. It's attributed to him several times. I did find that he wrote at one time something very similar. He wrote, all the friars should preach by their deeds. And I think that's along the same line. Now, obviously, with the gospel, words are important. It says in John, 1st chapter, 1st verse, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So obviously, words are necessary. But I think the truth there in these sayings is that fewer words with integrity are more effective than many words without integrity. And I think the way Dad would put it is the gospel is just as much caught as it is taught. And this was Dad. When I think about him, he didn't always need to be heard. He didn't command the attention of the room whenever he walked in. But whenever he did have something to say, I always feel that everyone listened because the type of integrity in the way he lived his life. It's been noted, and many of you already know this, and it was in the obituary, that Dad was a master carpenter. We went back and to look at the caskets, and there's many with wood and many were metal, and my first inclination, if Dad's going to get in anything that's made out of sheet metal, it better have a Chevy logo on it. And I didn't see any that had that, so it only seemed right that we find something made out of wood to honor that aspect of his life. I always kind of felt like when I was growing up as a kid that I had some secret connection with Jesus that not everyone had, because Jesus' dad was a carpenter, and my dad was a carpenter. And I don't know how it works, but I like to think in my mind that Dad's already been visiting with Jesus about that a little bit, and they're talking about the finer points of a dovetail joint or a frame and panel door. That would make me happy to think that. Many of you kind of know a little bit of the story of kind of what happened. It was super unexpected, and I feel free to talk to you more about it later, but he went in for bypass surgery. He'd had that done 25 years ago and had a good result out of it, and was having symptoms again, and the determination was made that needed to happen again. And when it came time and the surgery happened, everything was going great. We were getting updates every 30 minutes. Everything's on pace. Dad's doing great. Everything's good. We finally got a call that said, we're basically done. We're going to finish things up here in the OR, and we're going to have him out of here in 30 minutes and up in the ICU, and we'll call you when it's time to meet him up there. And then 30 minutes turned into an hour, and then an hour turned into an hour and 30 minutes, and it's like, what's going on? And then the gravity of the situation, once we did finally get up to ICU, he was there in a couple days trying to hope to see if he would show some improvement. And, questions start to form. And I had a couple of one-word questions that just kind of seemed to hit me, one and then the other. The first one-word question I had was, please. And I just remember being by Dad's bedside, and I couldn't come up with any other words but please. And I just would pray. I don't know how many times I said, please. That's all I could get out. And God chose not to answer the prayer in the way that I wanted it. And so then comes the next question, one-word question that just kind of kept over and over in my mind. Is why. And I know it can kind of feel uncomfortable sometimes to ask God why, but it's a natural question. And I tell my kids all the time that God knows our thoughts. We're not hiding anything from God, and He's big enough for our tough questions. So I continue to ask God why. But it came to me to realize that there's two sides to that coin. That if you're going to ask God, why did this happen this way? Why did he not come out of the surgery? Why do so many other people go in the same surgery? I work in the cardiology field. I see many people go through this and no problem really whatsoever. Why Dad? And to be fair, if I'm to ask that question, I have to ask why on the other side of the coin. And that's, to be fair, ask, why did I get a dad that was such a good example? Why did we get 25 more years with Dad after that first bypass surgery? Why did we get to learn so much from him? Why was he allowed to pass away peacefully with hope in his heart and no pain? Why do we have the assurance of seeing him again? I think it's only fair to keep those whys in mind as well. We have confidence that he is in heaven, and that begs the question, why? I'll tell you why it's not. It's not because he was a kind father, although he was. It's not because he was a generous giver, although he was. It's not that he was a helpful neighbor, although he was. It's not that he was a thoughtful friend, although he was. It's not that he was a wise counselor, although he was. It's not that he was a devoted husband, but he was. It's not that he tried to live a righteous life, although he did about as good as anyone. It's not because he learned about Jesus, although he did. It's nothing he did. I think that Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 10 explain it very well. And I'm going to read that for you out of the Message translation. And sometimes I like the Message translation. It's got this kind of down-home folksy wisdom. I think it really should have been called the WOV, the Western Oklahoma version. It just feels like a wise old farmer like Uncle John. But let me read this to you. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 10. And I'm going to add some Western Oklahoma emphasis to this, if you don't mind. Saving is all God's idea and all his work. All we do is trust him enough to let him do it. It's God's gift from start to finish. We don't play the major role. If we did, we'd probably go around bragging that we done the whole thing. No, we neither make nor save ourselves. God does both the making and the saving. He creates each of us by Christ Jesus to join him in the work he does, the good work he has gotten ready for us to do, the work we had better be doing. It's only because he had accepted the free gift of salvation God made only possible through Jesus that we have confidence that we have the chance to see him in heaven again. And since I've got a captive audience and you're not going anywhere, I'm going to give a shameless plug for Jesus. If anyone's not accepted that gift, there's no greater legacy of my Father than for you to accept that. And if you're not ready for that step, but just curious about this man called Jesus, I've got a couple of suggestions for you. One is to read in the New Testament. I would highly recommend starting with John. The other thing, too, is I've really been ministered lately to a series that's been released. It's about to finish up the second series called The Chosen. It's, I think, a very a good portrayal of what Jesus would have been like in his time on earth. And it's totally free. You can find it online, but I think that's something that would be worth checking out. A couple things before I wrap up. This is kind of an aside, but in the future, near or far, if you're in contact or visiting with me or any of the family, don't hesitate to say something about Dad or tell us that you miss him. I don't want you to ever worry about, hey, we're here to talk about football, or we're here for a pool party, or we're here for whatever, and I don't want to go there. I don't want to upset them. It might make us tear up a little bit if you do, but we would greatly appreciate it because, his memories that we have are kind of what keeps him alive on this side of eternity to us, and it would be meaningful for us. So as I kind of wrap up, you remember we kind of had the little activity where you had everyone stand up. I'd like to revisit that if anyone for any of those things stood up or raised their hand, or if Dad had made an impact on you in any way, I would ask if you'd stand right now, all together, and let's recognize that. And as I look around, that's really the real tribute to my father, is the impact on all of you guys. And I appreciate you guys very much. And I wondered, I don't know if this is weird or not, but I wonder if we could just, in honor of a life well lived, if we could just give Dad a hand real quick.